Hello and welcome to the Blue Talks, a LinkedIn and iUniversity initiative that aims to create a space that fosters positive change together with some of the most influential leaders and thinkers of our time. The pre-Socratic Greek philosopher Heraclitus, obsessed with understanding the meaning of the universe, believed that the key to everything was change. Today, we live in a society with two main forces of change. First, societal and technological disruption, and second, the challenge of a sustainable progress for all. To address these present issues, it's a great honor that our first Blue Talk is also a bit red. I have here today with me Ana Botín, Executive Chair of Santander, and Alan Blue, co-founder of LinkedIn. Welcome to both. Alan, let me start with you. How do you feel about the world that technology is creating?
I feel, in general, that technology remains a tool, and the effect it has depends on how we use it. We at LinkedIn, as you know, have built a technological platform which accelerates economic opportunity for professionals all around the world. We have understood, as we have built that we need to pay attention to what that platform actually does. And that it is our responsibility to deploy this technology not only for those people who already have those strong networks, but also for those people who are still building their networks or come from backgrounds where their networks aren't as strong.
Yep. Very interesting. According to a report of iUniversity Center for the Governance of Change, 67% of Europeans think that the governance of new technologies, together with climate change, are the biggest challenge that our society faces right now. Ana, bienvenida. You are on record in 2018 for the provocative statement that Silicon Valley can learn something from the banks. What did you mean by this?
It was my first article on social media. That same year, 2 months later, I took my whole board to actually meet in Silicon Valley. And we took them around and met some of the biggest companies in the Valley. After I left Silicon Valley, I was more than ever convinced that something was going to happen at some point in terms of people asking that these big platforms, I want to say LinkedIn, I consider being one of them, had to be more responsible in the broader sense of the term. And I realized the power that banks can have for better and for not so good when we don't do our jobs right. And that was exactly what was happening to big tech. And so, again, I've always thought that with great power comes great responsibility. And I wasn't seeing that responsibility in some of these companies. The crisis came and it generated new regulation, but also demands for a new culture and accountability. And this is really what I was saying, in my view, is needed, still needed today, by the way. And it's not an easy thing to do, but it has to be done. And I do believe that, the only way to be and to have a sustainable business model is to realize that you have not just one, but several stakeholders. And so that we need a new culture. And I think this is the 2008 moment for big tech.
Yeah, absolutely, Alan. On top of co-founding LinkedIn, you're also in charge of product innovation, the design of your products, and the use that governments and other corporations might make of them have political, social, and economic implications that affect millions of people around the globe. So, do you take this into account when making product design decisions?
Well, we do. And I guess I should say we try our best to do so. There are many things which we can take care of ahead of time. There are some things we only discover after the fact. So I'll give you an example. We have for several years now been able essentially to measure the differences in how men and women have experiences on LinkedIn. And we discovered that our search algorithm was unintentionally bringing men to the top of the search results. And it turns out the reason that was the case is that, on average, men provide a little bit more information on their LinkedIn profiles than women do. So this was something that we would never have designed into the beginning of the product, but that when we actually were able to detect it on the way out, that basically we were unintentionally biasing the search results. We were able to put in measures to make sure that we had re-evened that playing field.
Every single study and our own experience, we have 200,000 employees, half men, half women, but we only have 26% women executives. And we believe we run a meritocracy. What we find is when we do job postings, men put themselves forward even if they're 50% qualified. Women only put themselves forward if they're 100 or over 100% qualified, which is unbelievable, but true. And I've checked with consultants and other companies, and it happens across the world, across all industries. So that is interesting that it happens on social media, that women put less information.
So when we think about diversity and inclusion and the way in which we're building products for our members, we talk about not just how do we ensure that our search algorithms are fair, but also about how do we ensure that the company's commitment to those changes is a real one. Because in the end, we at LinkedIn have a responsibility both to companies and to individuals.
Anyhow, Anna, you're very active in social media, in many platforms. I follow you in Instagram, and I saw that you switched off your likes on this platform. But on the other hand, you are full of praise, for LinkedIn. Why did you make this decision, on one platform and not in the other one? And imagine, please, that Alan is not here today in your.
So I want to say I do all my social media for work purposes. I mean, if I didn't have this job, I wouldn't do social media, I have to say. So I want to be very candid about this. And I do it because I think that's where people communicate. That's where brands get to be known, and the image we have and connecting with people. We have 153 million customers. That's 40 million more than 4 years ago across Europe and the Americas. And 4 million companies, millions of SMEs. So I need to be where they are present. So that's not just TV or newspapers now. So that's a reason. So I joined LinkedIn and Twitter at the same time. Instagram I thought was not for me, but then I found out many of my employees are on Instagram, and my customers, of course, my new customers tend to be young. So if I am just a boring, in a way we have to be boring and prudent as a bank, but we also need to connect with the younger generations. Otherwise, my customers ultimately will, as we all will at some point, pass away, right? So that's the reason I did that. As you know, I turned off the likes. So, and the reason is very simple. Again, I have a lot of younger friends and through my kids, and I see the anxiety it provokes, and I think it has a lot of good things, but a lot of things that are not so good. And I think, that's a small step, but it's a signal that we need to do something about this.
In many of your public pronouncements, be it for the sake of our economies or the environment that you make in social media or in other events, you are calling on governments to take action. Why do you think governments are perceived as being so indecisive and slow to act these days, no?
Banks, I guess, and governments to some extent, we're supposed to be reliable, and sometimes when you move fast, you can, let's say, not break things, but run risk that you shouldn't be running. And so in a way, I do understand that. However, and I do also think it's not an easy question. I think we have the rules that we're being run, and I'm talking about competition law. I'm talking about transparency. I'm talking about how and where you pay taxes. All of these rules were written for an analog age. If I manufacture a car in Germany and I'm BMW and I export it to Spain, the value is created in Germany. Where is the value created on LinkedIn or Facebook when you're actually, relying on an algorithm? I don't have a clear answer, but I know it's not all created where you're writing the algorithm. And so if we allow these rules to be written by court cases and, governments putting fines on companies. I don't think that's the right way to do that. I think a lot of the inequality, and it's not just among people, it's amongst countries, is going to make the world a much more difficult place for everybody. And I think it's in our common interest that we sit down around the table with people that understand what is happening and where value is being created. And we try to come up with some kind of a rule book that is, up to the speed of how we're operating.
I mean, this is something that we are talking a lot about at university, rewriting a new social contract for the digital era, in which the rules of the game have completely changed for all of us, and we need to be part of this debate, because if not, we will be. The debate will take us through. So maybe Alan, you have any ideas on this?
So first of all, I applaud your putting pressure on governments to be able to address these things. I think it is important for companies to step up and say, we actually need greater guidance and we need greater structure in which we can work. That hopefully that is pressure that governments actually pay attention to. And it's been my impression in talking to lawmakers, at least in the United States, that they are very open to sitting down and having a conversation about the way things might actually function. I think that it is easier to break down what at least exists in the United States now, which is a kind of very defensive, very combative relationship between industry and government. I don't think that needs to exist, or at the very least, I think it is easy enough to break down and try a different way.
Yeah, interesting. Let me take you to the science fiction side, because it's always interesting looking at that debate, about the possibility of combining biotechnology and artificial intelligence to replicate abilities of humans, in the not so far future, or even enhancing human intelligence through biotechnologies such as CRISPR, from the Nobel Prize, recently awarded Nobel Prize, Jennifer Doudna. So my question here would be, what makes humans unique?
So obviously Silicon Valley pushes pretty hard into the future of the relationship between machines and people. We, on one hand, build the technologies which hopefully will make our world a better place. So most famously in these cases, machine learning and robotics and artificial intelligence. When we think about LinkedIn, we tend to zone in a little bit on skills and in the future of work. So if there is as two MIT economists said, if there was a first machine age where machines replaced muscles, we're currently living in the second machine age where machines replace brains. And it's has interesting implications for what might come down the line. If we build these machines, which essentially do thinking for human beings, it changes the way our jobs work quite a lot. And therefore, it's our responsibility as we develop and deploy these technologies to think about what that means for individuals who are working.
In the last decades, we have been talking one of those technologies. One of the things that technology offers us is how we see data, and it has become, let's call it, they call it the new gold, the new oil, etc. Now, top thinkers such as Yuval Noah Harari have been preaching, about the threats that this poses on our society. And you lead a top financial institution that has been around for a while, more than a century, and you know the importance of privacy for your clients and for the broad society. What do you think about the debate on data rights, privacy, and the so-called surveillance capitalism?
Well, I'm in a business where everything is based on trust. And of course, my customers And we have a rule, and I think we're not the only one. Of course, we never talk about our customers in public, so we never reveal their data effectively. And in the digital age, of course, that data that we take care of is now very much in the open. And that is a fundamental change in the way society works. That, some companies seem to have discovered now that data is important. And so basically, data allows us to know who you are. It allows me to know that, you want to buy a house and I'm going to offer you a mortgage. And I know you have a family. I can offer you, some financing for your kids to go to university. If you're retiring, I can offer you a pension fund. It's about understanding and knowing customers. And that is why every company wants to know their customers, i.e. their data. There's another rule in Europe, which has become pretty much global, called GDPR, right? I think every company has to apply GDPR. The fact is, not every company applies GDPR in the same way. Why? Because it's a rule which for many companies is not supervised by anybody. In banking, it is supervised, and in other sectors.
I just wanted to pick up one of the things you said in there, which I think is fantastic. If I, as a banking customer, would like to be able to get that better rate or better terms or whatever on a loan or a line of credit or whatever I'm interested in, one of the things which would behoove me as that potential customer would be could I bring my data to the table in a way which helps the bank make that choice? So I think it may foreshadow a little bit about what the future needs to look like. At least this is my opinion. So at LinkedIn, the way we think about the profile that you've put up on LinkedIn as your information, which you have put out there into the world for your own benefit. But I can control that information. I can present what information I want in a way which basically makes me more successful doing what I do. One of the things which I think is going to be important down the line is to understand that the data that represents us is not as simple as a LinkedIn profile. A LinkedIn profile is a pretty simple thing. Anybody looking at it can understand all the pieces there and can figure out how they would create such a profile. But when it comes to all of the data we create on a regular basis, information about where I am geolocated off my phone, or information that comes from my spending history, or information which comes from the number of miles on my car. There's all kinds of pieces of information which can be digitized, and in many cases are already being digitized, which is far more than I can manage as a person. So maybe there's a brand new data environment in the future where individuals are stronger players than they are today.
One of the keys, Alan, you were talking about is control, no? And I think things have been moving so fast that people cannot be in control of what they don't know, and they are accepting things and they are giving for granted trust that they didn't really have the knowledge to accept. So one of the key roles here is going to be education. People need to be aware of what they are doing and how their data is being used. No, once you generate that, then trust will be built and control will be in the side of the individual. No,
it's difficult because it's actually done on a sort of moment-by-moment basis. So you mentioned GDPR. One of the outputs of GDPR has been those cookie warnings which appear whenever you go to to a website on your phone or whatever, and it says accept all cookies or like adjust or whatever. I don't even.
And you always accept.
All you do is accept, exactly.
You always accept. You don't know what you do.
But the number of times I have to make that decision during the day is completely out of control. I'll probably 30 times. And every single time, all I'm doing is saying, no, just take it all. Because I don't even know how I would judge whether you're using my data properly or not, or like what the trade-offs are for me.
One last question, Anna, because all this conversation is about individuals, no? And humans go in their day-to-day lives go beyond their works, etc. No? And I started this interview quoting Heraclitus and his understanding of the universe and change, and his philosophy about change. And I also want to finish a bit in the same line. No? Classical philosophers such as Socrates, Plato, or Aristotle try to figure out what eudaimonia is, no? Or living in good spirits. Anna, in what way you think sustainability is part of living a good life?
First of all, there's a let's say a personal but also a professional side to that, and they're very much linked. So I think we have an obligation to leave a better world than what we found. I think the more power, as I said at the beginning, the greater the responsibility. There's many angles to sustainability, of course, but the climate issue, we have decided as a company to be a leader on climate change. It's a complex issue. We need to get it right. I have to be personally living myself by what I'm preaching to my teams and my company, but also that the issue of how you measure carbon credits and all this is incredibly complex. And we have an obligation to contribute to that. And we have decided as a bank that that's one of our areas of focus. There's another one, of course. Sustainability is not possible if we don't build an inclusive society. So the other area where we as a company are focusing is on financial inclusion. And we have committed to including, beyond what we do in our everyday banking, 10 million people by 2025, developing products and services that are accessible, simple apps, mobile apps, and so on. So to me, that is really the point. As a person and in my case, as a leader of a big company with millions of customers and so on, that we can actually do not just our day-to-day job right, which is what we're discussing before, and that is obviously the biggest impact we can have, but also how we choose certain angles in terms of how we leverage what we as a company do well to benefit the world in a way that also aligns with my shareholder interest. And we have found climate because I think it's both a challenge, but also a huge opportunity. We have been leaders in renewable finance. Santander has for the last 10 years, actually 15 years globally. People don't know that, but we're one of the top leaders on that. And it makes sense for all of us. And so that is, and the same thing goes for financial inclusion. That to me is what sustainability means, and I guess living a good life.
Thank you very much. Alan, thank you very much to both for being here today in this first Blue Talk, a bit dread talk. This initiative I think is going to generate a space of debate that fosters positive change, that at the end is what we all aim as leaders of our companies and as individuals in our communities and in the broad society. So thank you very much to both for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.